Jordan Bohannon, Jared Stansbury. It's Jared and J-Bo on Iowa Everywhere. This is Iowa Everywhere.
Yo, welcome into the podcast. It's February 1st here on Iowa Everywhere. What's up, Jordan? What's going on, man?
Doing great. Sun's out. Felt like it's been overcast in Iowa for the past months, dude. Ready for spring.
Sun's out. Need to break the guns out. Where's your cutoff?
I got little squirt guns. I can't really bring those out.
That's fair. No, yeah, nobody wants to see that. Nobody wants to be exposed to that. All right, but we got a lot to get to on today's podcast. A couple of different college basketball topics. Of course, Iowa State and Iowa both had a busy week. Two very different types of weeks for both of those teams. So we'll get to those in just a minute. But first, I want to tell you about what our friends with here at Iowa Everywhere are doing with the folks out at Circa Sports Iowa. And we want to throw one lucky person the ultimate big game house party, and we're going to do it in style. Register on iowaeverywhere.com to win a big game watch party prize package, including Circa Sports Iowa swag for you and your guests, a $300 Fairway meat and grocery gift card, and a trip for two to Circa Resort and Casino in Las Vegas with $500 in spending money. Jordan, what would you do with $500 in spending money at Circa in Las Vegas?
Put it all on black.
Sounds like a really poor investment. Like, that's just a really bad money decision.
I mean, what else are you gonna do? You're in Vegas. Might as well.
You could save some of it and space it out throughout the trip and not put it all on black.
Or you could just all put it on black and you have $1,000
Well, that's assuming that you win.
when you win. You can have that mentality.
You just, like, this is the same guy who came on here and told me how Vegas is rigged.
Oh, it's rigged.
And now you're going to come in here and say, put your $500 on black.
I think you can change. I think you can beat Vegas with a better mentality.
So basically, since the last time you went to Vegas, your entire opinion of Vegas has flipped.
Yep, I'm ready to go back.
I don't even know what to say. I don't even know what to say to you. As part of this, with our friends at Circa Sports, you and I will be out watching the big game a week from Sunday at Wellman's in West Des Moines. Hope people will come out and hang out with us. We'll have all kinds of details as far as time and things like that. I'm sure there will be specials. We'll get all that stuff out for you guys here over the next week or so. But we're really excited for that. Looking forward to that out at Wellman's in West Des Moines a week from for the big game a week from Sunday. We can't say the official name. That's against the law. So we have to say the big game. It's trademark.
It is?
Well, I mean, yeah. They own all that stuff. So when you're promoting things, you can't say.
Oh, that's so stupid.
The fantastic football game. You can't use the true words.
Is that the same thing for the NCAA tournament?
Yes, that's why everybody calls it. I think they own March Madness too. They'll call it the tournament or whatever.
That's some bullshit.
Yeah, it's just how it goes. The NFL has got to protect the shield, as they often say.
Don't they have enough money? Why are they worried about that?
No, I think that the NFL has made it blatantly clear that they do not feel as though they have enough money. I think that the NFL's pattern of behavior has made that very clear.
I have no words.
Should be a great game, though. Should be a great game.
Can I say SB?
I mean, yeah, I don't know. If we're just going to talk about it, yeah, we can. But when we're talking about the promotion of the event we're doing at Wellman's West Des Moines, we cannot say it. Or talking about the thing we're doing with Circa Sports, which you can sign up for at iowaeverywhere.com to win that prize package and get a trip for two out to Circa Resort and Casino in Las Vegas. Don't put 500 on black though. That's just that's stupid. That's just bad decision making. That's just something that's what you do when you're, I don't know. You could have so much fun with that $500 and instead you could just lose it right away.
In one little roll of the ball. Watch it go round and round and round. And it's sitting nicely in that color black. And then boom, $1,000.
And then boom, $1,000. Just like that, you've got $1,000 at your disposal.
Really, we should
courtesy of our friends at Circa Resort.
We should really be advertising a free $1,000 if we're thinking about it. don't
I
know.
suppose that is one way to look at it. That is one way to look at it. All right. Iowa won back-to-back games this week. Got a big win last night against Northwestern in the Chris Street game, the rescheduled game from that was rescheduled due to COVID in the Northwestern program. Got a win over Rutgers over the weekend as well. Got to go, or they're going to host Illinois on Saturday at Carver Hawkeye Arena. What'd you think of the game last night against the Wildcats?
Played really well. I didn't think Chris had the best game, but Peyton stepped up greatly. I mean, I think I said it a couple weeks ago, when he's playing like he is, it's a totally different team. He's the ultimate X factor guy. Even though I hate that term, I think he's brings a totally different dimension when he's able to shoot freely and have his mind freed up of any lack of confidence or whatever it was at the beginning of the Big Ten play. Because, I mean, you see with Iowa State too, when Grill's able to shoot like how he is, or Callister's stepping up big. Same thing with Iowa. When you have a shooter step up like that, it opens the floor so much. Other guys are able to get more involved. Phillip had 20 and 10 against Northwestern as well. Yeah, and to be honest with you, I'm shocked for. I give a lot of credit to Fran for handling the lineup like he has. It's been really tough with his son Patrick coming in and out. He got brought back a couple games ago, and how he's been able to shuffle the lineup and still stay true to a lineup to help win the game. Because these last two games they won were huge in their conference standings. Northwestern was outright second. And there's like I think there's 5 to 7 teams that are all in the middle of the pack from 2 to 12 basically in the Big Ten, all within like a game and a half. So we're going to see a lot of switching up and down for a lot of these teams. And Iowa drops those 2 games. They could literally have went from, I think they're like 5th or 6th in the league, down all the way to 11th and 12th. That's how crazy the Big Ten is this year. But another big one against Illinois. I'm looking forward to watching that one.
There are 9 teams in the Big Ten with 4 or 5 losses.
Crazy.
Wisconsin has 6, Ohio State has 7, Nebraska has 9, and Minnesota has 9. How's Minnesota only played 10 games and everybody else has played 12? It doesn't make any sense. They're probably going
to have a back-to-back here.
It still doesn't seem to make any sense. But, yeah, I mean, that's just like I don't know. That's just a pileup of a bunch of teams, and it's like all those teams are pretty similar caliber where that like any of them could beat anybody. It's like every game, it doesn't matter if it's Illinois and Maryland, or if it's Michigan State and Penn State, or Michigan and Iowa. Like, every single one of those games is going to be good, and you have no idea which way it's going to go anytime those teams play each other.
Yeah, it's hard to predict. It's one of those. This reminds me of the. I think it's 2020 when the season got canceled at the end of the year. There was a ton of Big Ten teams. Like, I think there was 3 winners in the Big Ten regular season that won it. And it feels like one of those years. I mean, obviously Purdue is stacked at the top. They're probably going to run away with outright champs for the Big Ten conference title. But there's going to be a lot of teams fighting for NCAA positions. So every single game is going to matter for all the middle of the pack teams. Realistically, I think the Big Ten will get probably 5 to 6 teams in. I don't think we'll see past 6, just because I do think the Big Ten's a little down this year. But it's the same thing every year, I feel like. They're just beating the shit out of each other every game. We see the middle of the pack where it's like 500 for their standings, and one game can mean a huge difference for your whole season. I think these last 2 games, Iowa really stepped up hugely to kind of start separation from being in the top middle of the pack instead of the bottom middle of the pack. What
do you see from Illinois? That's a weird team. They've really been kind of back and forth, but they've been playing really well right now. Won 7 of their last 8.
Very bizarre team. Have a guy that one of their best players leave midway through the season. So they're balancing that, and they kind of really answered the call when that happened. So you got to give a lot of credit to their staff at Illinois, getting those guys together, keeping them together. And that's really hard to do in college basketball, because you have a lot of young guys that are coming in high school that are star players in their own rights. Some of them might have egos, and getting them to all play together is really tough. And the transfer portal as well. Illinois getting some guys out of the transfer portal and bringing those guys together and being on the same page, especially now. Right now is the most important part of the season, and winning the last 7 of the 8 is huge. And I think that's something that I would imagine would carry over into postseason play. And I'm talking postseason play. I'm not even counting that as Big Ten title tournament. I'm technically counting that as like the last 5 games. I think postseason play is the last 5 games of the conference play all the way towards the NCAA tournament. I think that considers the start of postseason play because those 5 games are huge telling of where their season is going to end up towards the end of the year. And Illinois is a really bizarre team. I don't even know how to explain them, dude. Like, they have some
guys on that team that can really get buckets when they're feeling it, like Matt Meyer. That guy could go for 25 on any given night, but you also just don't know which version of him is going to show up.
Right. Yeah. And he's a guy that I didn't expect to be as much of a impact guy as he has been. I think he's really stepped up, but I think Iowa and Illinois are similar teams, to be honest. You don't know what team you're going to get. And that's bizarre for both of those teams to happen based off how they've been playing the last 3 years. So this could be a game like in the low 60s, or this game could be in the high 80s. I don't know what to expect defensive-wise from Illinois or defensively from Iowa. It's just if I were betting on the game, I would advise not to. That's all I'm saying.
Ken Pom has Iowa 78 or 79 to 77.
Again, I don't know. I like this game could be a blowout, dude. Like either way, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I mean, if someone gets hot shooting, did you see Brad Underwood last night? They were playing Nebraska, and he came out of the halftime locker room with 7 minutes left on the clock and was sitting on the bench by himself.
Yeah, I think the announcer said, in all of my career of watching basketball, I've never seen that ever. I'm like, but Illinois fans will always find a way to say that like anything that goes wrong. Illinois fan, dude,
let it out.
I'm gonna let it out for a second. Illinois fans are always find something that is like seemingly wrong, and they'll think it's okay. Like, I don't even know how to explain their mentality or how they process information. Brad Underwood could literally kill someone, and they would say it was okay. I feel like.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't know. You have more exposure, more experience with Illinois fans than what I do. I thought it was a little bit goofy because he was sitting out. He's just like out there by himself, and that seemed less impactful than it's like if you want to like leave the team in the because I can imagine how this went. It's like you're in the locker room, and he's like, "You guys are going to sit in here and you're going to think about what you've done, and you can come out when you're ready to play." And then he stormed out, and then was like, shit, now what do I do? And it's like, probably just go to your office, like just go like chill for a little bit. But instead he like went out and sat on the bench, and he had the board on his lap, and he's like looking at it, and it's like, there ain't shit written on that board. Yeah. Like there's nothing, he's not drawing anything up. He's just like sitting there, and at that point you're like, I mean, like what's the point, I guess. It worked out apparently because they won the game, but it's just an odd thing. I don't know. It's just a weird coaching tactic.
And Illinois fans, I bet they see that and they're like, "Oh, he's doing that for a reason." Like he's exactly what you just explained. Like he was in the locker room, like, "Come out when you're ready." Illinois fans just think they know every single like interesting thing about their team. It just really bothers me. I've never encountered a fan base like it before, and they're awful on social media too.
I don't know I think I know one person who's a real like Illinois fan. And even then, like, I don't know if he's like how intensely of an Illinois fan he is.
Yeah, I feel like that's all their fans. Like, where were they 4 years ago when they were bottom of the league?
We need to go to Illinois and have pictures of D. Brown, Deron Williams, Bruce Weber, and say, "Do you know who this is?" What do you think? How do you feel about the way D. Brown's played this year for the Illini? They wouldn't have an answer. They wouldn't know. No. No, man, that team, though, those guys were different. That was the team that exposed me to Illinois basketball back in the day. But yeah, I don't know. It's just a weird dynamic. Brad Underwood's a weird coach too. I just have always gotten weird vibes from him.
I think, yeah. I mean, I have very limited interactions with Brad Underwood. Every time I've talked to him, he's been a very respectful, great guy. I just think there's, and this kind of goes along with the double standard. I always talk about Coach McCaffrey, like him getting so much heat for being a guy that blows up during games. I mean, Coach Underwood is worse, like 10 times worse than Coach McCaffrey is, I feel like. But I don't know. I feel like his coaching strategies are a little bizarre, in my
What would have been
opinion.
your reaction if Coach McCaffrey storms out and then after the game you get on Twitter and you see a picture of him sitting out on the bench just by himself with the board?
He would get crucified by social media. Crucified. Like,
Yes.
Seth Davis would be all over him. This is such a bad look. In all caps. He's going all caps this time.
That's very much like an old school coach move, I feel like,
Yeah.
not actually. It's just a very, I'm going to do this and I don't know if it's going to actually do anything, but we're going to make it happen,
Right. Yeah. I know,
Just
Illinois
grasping for straws.
Just the whole program is kind of an interesting program. They're definitely it's funny, like looking back, you have, I mean, I'm sure if you talk to any other Big Ten player, they would say the same thing. You have like your own, like you're not like best friends with teams, but you have like your teams in the Big Ten that you're kind of closer to. It's kind of hard to explain, but like obviously us and Rutgers, like we're kind of like close programs. Like I feel like for whether that's because of me and Gio fighting for NIL, but like I feel like we don't really rival against each other that much.
Mhm.
Obviously, when we play, we want to compete hard, and there's going to be some shit talk like that. But then you have your teams that you just fucking hate. Like Iowa hates Wisconsin, Iowa hates Illinois, and like those types of games. Iowa doesn't like Michigan State, and you go back and forth. Iowa's okay with Michigan. Like there's really a lot of banter there. I don't know. It's weird, like looking back, like how those driving forces kind of impact, I don't know, social media too, I feel like.
I mean, how much of that do you think is hinged by the intensity level of the games? Obviously you guys played much more intense games with Illinois than you probably did with Rutgers at any point in your career.
Yeah, like that's a good point too. I mean, but I feel like Rutgers, we had some great like it was at their place last year when they got called for that foul, or we got called for the foul and they won on like literally Courtney Green gifting the game. I mean, that was pretty heated, but I mean, we're still like, we respect those guys. Not that we don't respect other people. I feel like there's like a different level of respects that we have for different teams.
Illinois had some guys on their team who like to stir the pot, I think would be a good way to put it. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, Iowa has it too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And when you get multiple of those guys together, like it just, fireworks can ensue. It's just how it goes.
Yeah. And I think that kind of got a bad rap from some guys on social media too, because I think it was that 2020 year again when Connor and I think it was
Iowa, wasn't it? Yeah.
No, I think it was Williams.
Okay.
Got in his face, and I think there's a picture of it. Connor might have posted it, but
weren't they like nose to nose?
Yeah, they're nose to nose, and I know off the court, like they were talking to each other, like they're cool, and I'm sure they're cool still now, but fans see that and they just go berserk. Like these guys, I would be like, "Oh, this guy's an asshole. Like, why would you get in another player's face like that?" And Illinois fans would say the same thing on their side, and that just creates like this huge dynamic where there's these diverse opinions, and I think there's like this huge rivalry now. And then a year later, like we get in a fight, we don't shake hands. It's just all this stuff that kind of builds up. I feel like the fans do have like a huge play into, I feel like, how players play too on the court, on social media, how they react to stuff.
Well, and obviously there is an element of like, you might be friends with somebody that does, like, you might want to beat them even more because you're friends with them. Right. And it's like you might not like somebody and it's like, yeah, we want to beat these guys because we don't like them, but it's just like you don't have like a personal problem with them. How often do you see that in the NBA where guys are clearly just friends with each other? It's just because the basketball world is not that big. You meet people in camps, you meet people at, playing in AAU tournaments or whatever. And it's like you build relationships with people and then all of a sudden you got to play against them. And like, if you know the kind of player they are and they know the kind of player you are, those kinds of things can get heated, and it's like, it's very rarely, I feel, personal the way that people probably think of it being.
Yeah, exactly. I think people see that from the outside and the normal fan doesn't understand, like they worked out together all summer. they're really close and they're just hard-nosed competitors that just want to win. And they're just like that on the floor. But after the floor, it's like a totally different relationship. I think Russell Westbrook even said that after an interview a couple years ago. He's like, I'm friends with all these guys in the league, but the minute we step foot on the floor, I'm not friends with anybody. Like, I'm going to kill you, and I want to be reacted by the same way. Like, we're just trying to win.
One of the weirdest, this is kind of off topic, but I saw something last week, or it was, I think, over the weekend, that LeBron and Kevin Durant have not played each other since Christmas Day 2018.
Holy shit.
Yeah. And that's like, it's like the NBA Cold War now between KD and LeBron. And I think that those guys are, I think those guys are friends, and obviously there's a lot of mutual respect there between the two of them. But I was like, I don't know if that's a we're friends move, so we're just like kind of avoiding each other, or if it's a we hate each other so much that we're just avoiding each other type of situation at this point. But they've both obviously been injured and different things, so it's like there's some bad luck to it. But that was just weird. Like, think if LeBron retires and never plays against Kevin Durant again.
I didn't know it's been that long. That's
Yeah.
actually crazy to think about, especially the amount of games that they've played in the last 5 years. I guess Durant was hurt a little bit. LeBron's been in and out too, but
Christmas Day 2018 would have been, what would that have been? That would have been like LeBron's first year in Los Angeles, right? Like, I don't even know.
2018, yeah.
That would have been when the Raptors won the title, so it would have been, like right at the end of kind of that whole thing. But that was just, that really jumped out to me. I was like, damn, like what are the odds of that? Even though they only play each other twice, and KD obviously was out for a long time with the Achilles. LeBron's been out for a bunch of different things, but I was like, that's a weird basketball tidbit for people, I guess.
I love that kind of stuff, that little strange facts, just about anything in life. Like
at this point, I almost wonder if it's calculated that the two of them are like, yo, we're not going to play each other anymore.
It's written in the script. That's the NBA script.
Well, yeah, we know the NFL's rigged now, so it's like we got to assume that the NBA is rigged as well.
I'm ready for a rigged SB game. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll be rigged too. Even though all the things that allegedly the Chiefs had that were rigged in their favor did not really even impact the game in any way.
Yeah.
But people forget that because we just want to blame the officials. It's the officials' fault.
Yeah, I'm cool with it. You guys want to blame officials? I am the number one supporter.
Hey, I'm all in on we want to blame the officials. anybody looks at what happened to LeBron in Boston on Saturday night and everything that happened. What did you just say? You just said that wasn't a foul?
Refs didn't call it. It wasn't a foul.
I saw something that the guy who was the crew chief for that officiating crew, the Celtics are 36-2 in games he's officiated since 2018.
See, that's the type of shit I want to. I need to start researching before I bet. Like, obviously, I can't bet on NBA games, but if that's the case during like NFL or college basketball, I need to know that. And
how is that not a massive red flag? Or anything like it's just like what's Chris Paul? I don't think's ever won a game when Scott Foster was officiating.
All right, Foster should be in jail, maximum security prison.
Him and the Unabomber in maximum security prison together.
They should be neighbors next to each other.
But no, that's just it is weird. Like that's just a weird thing because those guys are humans too, And it's like if all of a sudden you're in a position to help your team and like or whatever, like. I'm sure you try and be non-biased, but it's like, how do you control that at the same time?
Yeah. I mean,
in the NFL to rig anything in the NFL, it would have to be so blatantly clear, and they would have to call so many different things at so many crucial points of the game for it to matter that it would like that is just really hard for me to believe. But
I love the videos. Like, there's some that go viral sometimes of like professional games or. Even in college basketball, like people say it's a glitch in the matrix. Like how did this ball get to this guy's hands? Like that type of stuff. I think it's the funniest stuff ever because people like actually believe that type of stuff. Like, oh, this game was actually rigged and someone's controlling the game.
I saw a video last week where Draymond was driving the lane and kicking the ball out, or he turned like he was going to kick it out, and then Clay caught his shoe. And then he dropped it back behind, and it looked like Draymond threw the shoe out to him instead of dropping it out. And I was like, what are the odds that you would ever catch that at that angle to make it look like he got his shoe thrown to him and was going to shoot it, you know?
Yeah, that's a perfect example. I die, dude, because those comments like on Twitter and Instagram when they see that, they're like, "Oh my gosh, this is so rigged. I bet $500 on the Warriors. I bet $500 on Celtics, and they pulled off." Like that stuff is. I actually die laughing reading those comments.
I don't know. The people that are like, "Oh, I'm going to put $8,000 on the Lakers tonight or something," you know, like it just is like going to the Boston Garden and then you lose on a bad call and everybody's like, "What the fuck? I put all this money on the Lakers." It's like, well, you're the one who bet on like a sub 500 team going to Boston on a Saturday night. I don't know what more do you want. Like, whose fault is that? You know?
Like I said, I'm glad we went round circle here, right back to the officials. I am the number one supporter with going after the officials. You know the scene in Braveheart when they line up together, right?
Yes.
Back in the old wars, like the
when they in the
British
battle lines
here and the
yeah.
What's the main actor?
Mel Gibson. Yeah.
Mel Gibson is leading the troops, and then like they have to retreat, and he brings back the flag. That's me when something shitty happens in sports and everyone crucifies the officials, and the officials gain all this ground, and then we just all fight back with the officials. That's me carrying the flag, pushing towards the officials.
All our basketball conversation on the podcast is brought to you by our friends at Sweet Caroline's Kitchen and Cocktails on Main Street in Ames. It's a perfect place to go before or after Iowa State home games, anytime the Cyclones are on the road or anytime the Hawkeyes are in action. It's a great spot for late night fun with a Southern-inspired menu with a great collection of burgers, sandwiches, wings, and of course, Caroline's famous fried chicken. The atmosphere is incredible with plenty of TVs to watch any game on your radar, and there's a party room available for rent for your next big gathering. That's Sweet Caroline's Kitchen and Cocktails at 316 Main Street in Ames, the presenting sponsor of all of our basketball conversation here on the podcast. All right, flipping things over to the Iowa State side, the Cyclones, back-to-back losses here heading into this next weekend. Lost to Missouri last Saturday in the Big 12 SEC Challenge, and then lost to Texas Tech in inexplicable fashion. There is an explanation, but it was inexcusable fashion, I think would be a better way to put it, on Monday night against Texas Tech in Lubbock, blowing a 23-point lead in the final 10 minutes. I think my thing, I've been trying to wrap my head around that game from Monday night for 2 days, because it was one of those games where you're sitting there watching, they're up by 23. Texas Tech's kind of starting to make a run, but in the back of your mind, you're like, they're not going to lose this game. You know, like there's no way they're going to lose this game. And then all of a sudden there's a minute left. The game's nearly tied. And you're like, oh shit, I think they're actually going to lose, you know? And it was so incomprehensible in the moment that they had blown that lead that it was just like, it was shocking. I was sitting there just like, I don't even know what to say at this point after that.
My favorite thing, before I get too in depth of the game, my favorite thing is looking on social media and scrolling through the tweets in the first half, and everyone's just going off on Iowa State, like how well they're playing, how well girls shooting the ball.
Which they were, yeah.
Which they were. And then in the second half, it's just the polar opposite. And I'm not even like saying it's like a comedy, like comical, like towards Iowa State fans, but like it's comical for how college basketball is, because that game is like the most college basketball game ever, because first off, this year is crazy. We talked about this last week or 2 weeks before, how Texas Tech had nothing to lose. Like this is the ultimate trap game to play in. They're playing a team that is, on paper, horrible this year, and they literally have nothing to lose. Like you could see that in the press conference. I think it was, I can't remember what player it was, but he was crying in the press conference, talking about the game and stuff, and how much they've been through and stuff like that. Like that is the most, when you're playing a desperate team like that is so hard to win, especially away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they, the perfect example of how that quickly that thing can flip. I tweeted out 28 minutes into the game that Tamin Lipsey had 8 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 steals, and 0 turnovers. He finished the game with 11 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 steals, and 4 turnovers. in the last 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So basically played one of his worst stretches of the game immediately after I tweeted that. And I had so many people tweet, it's your fault. It's your fault that this happened. And I was like, yeah, you're right. It is my fault. This did not
There's
age
no way
well.
people were blaming you.
Oh, I guarantee that if I went back and looked at the mentions of that tweet,
my
every
God.
single one of them is someone saying, look what you did. You jinxed him.
I hate those type of people. I hate them.
I just need to never acknowledge what anyone is doing until the game is over. That's
Especially,
that's
like,
going to be my new thing.
Yeah, especially because I remember I saw that tweet in the first half.
And he was
Like,
playing great ball. Like, it was hard
it was-
to not sit there and be like, man, the guy's playing great ball right
It
now.
wasn't even like a take you really had. It was just you just
just the facts.
stating his stats like they're
Yeah.
facts. But Lipsy looked really good in the first half. I don't know what. I'm gonna be honest. I turned the game off in the second half,
Mm-hmm.
and then I got back on Twitter. I saw they were tied up and pushing overtime. I'm like, holy shit, what happened? So I don't know anything that happened from like the 18-minute mark to overtime.
Yeah, I mean, I think if I was going to explain to you what happened, the desperation element was obviously the biggest piece of it. They really ramped up the pressure and really tried to force turnovers, and Iowa State's ball handlers did not do well with that. Taman looked like he got really rattled by trying to bring the ball up against that pressure and trying to get the ball to guys like Holmes and Kalsher, and then they both had some poor mistakes that it's just like bad timing of those things. And then I just felt like they stopped trying to attack on offense. They got into a very passive mode of where Texas Tech was able to take it to them, which is not when Iowa State plays well. You know, they play well when they're taking it to the other team. And so you got into a spot where the other team basically completely, like Texas Tech basically completely stopped guarding Lipsy between half court and the 3-point line. They've reached a point now, and I imagine we're going to see this more and more as this season continues on. His defender literally just sinks into the middle of the paint. And they're like, if you want to stand out there and shoot it, or you want to stand out there and stand around with the ball, then we're going to give you 30 seconds to do it all night long, you know? And it just creates an extra help defender. So that's the first part of it. That really, I think, threw him out of what he was trying to do. And then two, they just did a good job of being able to switch screens and things like that. And they have guys that are really long and athletic that are versatile and can guard multiple positions. So that takes away some of the driving lanes for guys like Kalsher or Holmes. But they have to be better at when they get those switches. They have to do a better job of getting the ball to like Oshun on the block when he's got Davion Harmon, who's 6 inches shorter than him, trying to guard him in the post. That's automatic. Get the ball to him. You know, that's how you open this thing back up, is when you can get the ball to the big fella and start forcing them to bring more attention to him. And then you can kick the ball back out and it can work out that way. But that's where I felt like they panicked, you know, on the offensive end, and they stopped doing the things that they needed to do to be successful. And then defensively, credit to Texas Tech. They spread the court and they just challenged people, and they said, we're going to drive by you all night, you know, and they got a favorable whistle. Not saying that it was nefarious by any means, but they definitely got a favorable whistle at home. And you start getting downhill, you start shooting a bunch of free throws, and all of a sudden a lead just disappears, you know.
I by any means, I'm not saying this is a game that's going to ruin their season. Obviously, they hit a tough stretch. We talked about that last week of playing Missouri midway through a conference season. Like, that was a trap game in itself. And to play a Texas Tech team that is desperate, like, that is a really hard stretch right there. But I think a game like this, obviously it sucks from a fan base perspective to look at and be like, damn, we just lost to a team that hasn't won in Big 12 conference play. This is going to be a momentum killer. We're going to struggle after this. From my experiences playing the game of basketball, these games are, again, I don't like the term of like wake up call as well.
Yeah.
As long as X Factor guys, but it's almost like you have to step back into reality and be like, we're not as good as, and I'm not saying they're being cocky at Iowa State or being overconfident or anything like that. It's a step back in reality and be like, okay, we still have a lot of work to do. We still have a lot of things we need to learn along this road to get to where we want to go. And games like this can be great learning points for teams. And I know TJ is going to be why am I blanking on his first name? I always do that. I'm like, I've known this guy for a long fucking time. I know as good as a guy and good as a coach he is, he's going to get this team back on the right track because of a game like this. It can be a team that's not properly taught and properly coached. This would ruin the season. But Iowa State is a team that's proven they're really good. They've beaten really good teams. They have a really good record. You know, they're top 15 in the country. Games like this is something that gets them back to that reality perspective like I was just talking about, and makes them realize that we still have a lot of work to do. And we have to bring it every single possession, not every night, every single possession, to pull off a deep run in the NCAA tournament, what they did last year, and continue to try to play their best basketball. And I honestly think this game will be a great eye opener for them.
Yeah, I think it was good that they got the 4 days after that game, before they have to play Kansas on Saturday. I imagine those will not be 4 fun days of practice.
No.
Especially after the way those last 10 minutes went, where they really got overpowered. You know, those are the kind of days where you show up and it's like, all right, we're not even putting the hoops down today. We're just going to work. You know, everybody get ready to beat the shit out of each other. That's it.
But that's what you need. Like if they would have came out of Missouri, beat Texas Tech, those 4 days, you're looking at a totally different scenario with that team. You know, and I remember having this happen. We were playing Minnesota on Christmas Day during COVID, and we got our ass kicked against Minnesota, and we had like quite a bit of break. And the next week sucked for practices. Like we were dreading to go to those practices because we knew we were just going to get killed. We're going to run up and down the floor the entire time. And we realized that we're just going to be downright tired, you know, these days coming ahead. And we realized after we got through that stretch, like, damn, we really needed that, man. Like we weren't all locked in at that point of the season. We really needed that stretch to wake us up and be like, we have a lot of games left ahead to really slack on any of that possession, like not taking a possession off, like I was just talking about with Iowa State. So I don't see this being a problem for Iowa State. I really don't.
No, I think they've just got some things they've got to sort through too. And you know, the hope now is that you get Jazz Kuntz back for Saturday too against Kansas. You know, he's been out for a month and was one of their most consistent offensive weapons and one of the most consistent leaders for 2 years since as long as he's been in the program. They've really missed him, you know, and I think even though they've played really well, you can tell where they need him and his ability to space the floor and his decision-making ability on the offensive end. And he's a smart defender as well, a guy who was your leading rebounder before he got hurt. So it's like you need to get that guy back. And once you do, then you really can understand what this team can shape into over the last month, you know. And I don't know that Caleb Grill is ever going to be 100% again the rest of the season with the way that back injury with those back injuries can linger, but he proved he can still shoot the ball. You know, it'll probably be kind of on a night-to-night basis. How good do you feel? But like, I don't think that there's any reason to hit the panic button, you know. And the reality is too, the winner of the Big 12 is going to have 5 or 6 losses anyway. So it's just, you got to be able to handle your business now.
Right. And you even look at Iowa State's schedule. Maybe they won a couple games on the Big 12 conference play already that maybe they weren't favored in, or honestly, they didn't even expect to win. So at the end of the day, it kind of all evens out based off, you know, how you attack your season and how you attack each day. At the end of this conference play, it's always going to shake out what you deserve to be at. And obviously, Iowa State didn't deserve to win that game, just being blunt, but they're going to deserve whatever ranking they get at the end of the season, whatever seed they get at the end of the season, and whatever seed they get in, you know, the Big 12 tournament and the NCAA tournament.
It's an interesting conversation because I had a bunch of people that texted me after that game Monday night, and they're like, this is my first time watching Iowa State. I thought this was supposed to be a good team. Yeah. And I was like, man, that's like the shitty thing about college basketball is people don't pay attention for so much of the season that it's like you could be a really, really freaking good team for 30 nights out of the year. But if you have one night that someone just happens to turn you on and you're a bad team, then people start to think you're a bad team. You know, Iowa State's got a good team. I don't have any question about that. Just like I think Iowa's got a good team too. Like I think both these teams have chances to do a lot of special things, but just got things to figure out, you know, kinks to work through because it's obviously a really long season. All right, we got a couple other college basketball things that we did want to get to. Jim Boeheim, who is a friend of the podcast, longtime friend of the podcast, Jim Boeheim. They had a tough one the other night, actually, right before that Iowa State game. Tough loss to Virginia at home. They led for most of the game. They were out without one of their best players, Benny Williams, who didn't play in the game. the first question that Jim Boeheim was asked in his press conference was about where Benny Williams was, which, frankly, when you lose the game, a tight game, and you're missing one of your best players, and no one has said where's one of the best players at, a fair question would be to say, hey, coach, where's one of the best players at? Jim Boeheim seemed to disagree and criticized what I believe was a student reporter's attitude and asked, is that really the most important question? And can Jim Boeheim just be less of a curmudgeon asshole? That would be a good start, I think, for us rebuilding our relationship with Jim Boeheim here on the podcast.
Or maybe just being a decent human being. I
Right.
really don't. It wasn't even that bizarre of a question. I know I texted you this after you sent me the clip and I watched it. I go, if that were me, I would be on my best behavior if I killed someone. I don't know. I really don't think his attitude is needed because it happened earlier in the year too as well. And obviously that wasn't the same situation. I don't even know. It might have even been the same person. Maybe it was. I don't know. But you got to do your job, man. And they're doing their job asking questions. Obviously, you were in the front seat of that. You asking questions to the guys at their worst times and asking questions at their best times. But that's your job. His job is to answer the questions and maybe do it a little more respectfully. He could have went about that. Like, if he didn't want to answer the question, you could have went about that a lot more respectful way.
Well, even if he didn't want to, he did answer the question. He said Benny Williams took a personal day and he would be back with the team on Wednesday, which is today. So I assume that he's back with the team and it won't even be any sort of an issue anymore. The thing I would say is if you don't like the question, the best time to voice that, especially with someone who's a college kid that's like just getting started, if you're Jim Boeheim and you really want to do things the right way, you'd pull that guy aside and in a respectful manner, you would say, hey, I didn't like the way you asked your question. Here's what I would say maybe you could do better. As a professional, someone who's been around this business for a long time, someone who's been around people who have done this job at a high level, this would be my advice to you to ask better, more insightful questions. I think that's a fair criticism. The kid doesn't have to necessarily agree with it. I don't know that I would necessarily agree with that approach of things. I'd be kind of like, I don't tell you how to do your job. You don't tell me how to do mine either. But I think it's one of those things where when you're going to make it a public thing and you're going to like go out of your way to embarrass people, I think that that's problematic.
I think anytime you treat someone anytime you act as you're superior towards someone, I think is when trouble arises. And I'm not saying his job is more important or his job is less, but I mean, let's be honest. Jim Boeheim is the star of the show. He's the coach at Syracuse. They're asking him the questions. Like his job is pretty important, but I don't see any reason to ever stoop to that level of acting as if you're more important than you think you are or more important than a person doing their job. I just see it's just disrespectful, man. And I don't have any I don't see there's any reason for that ever happening. I mean, maybe if it was handled a different way and it was more of a controversy, but this was flat out disrespectful. There was no argument I think on his side of being at respect.
It's just a normal question. Like,
it was a normal question.
Perfectly normal question. Yeah, and I think there's some coaches who are having a very hard time adjusting to the fact that college basketball is no longer all about them. College basketball for a really long time was all about the coaches. It was all the programs were the coaches. And if you had a good coach, then you had a good program. And the show is going to be John Thompson versus Jim Boeheim. It's going to be Mike Krzyzewski versus Roy Williams. It's going to be Tom Izzo versus Bob Knight or whoever. Whatever scenario you want to roll out there. It's not that way anymore. And it's shifting quickly. The coaches that are going to have success in college basketball moving forward are the ones that are going to realize that this sport's about the players and not about the coaches anymore. And It's not about your ability to draw people to watch because you are the show, And Jim Boeheim needs to figure out real quick because his team ain't very good. I think he needs to figure out real quick that if you don't make a significant shift, Jim Boeheim's not going to be the coach at Syracuse very much longer, as long as if Syracuse wants to get serious about winning basketball games again. Because right now, I think the way that they conduct their business, I think it would be hard to really sit here and think that Syracuse is serious about winning basketball games.
Yeah, and that's what it comes down to, conducting your business. You can't be a player and look at that types of stuff and be like, what are we doing, man? Like, what kind of operation are we running here? Do you want to go and play for that type of coach? Like, let's say you're a freshman coming in Syracuse and you see that, and you don't have prior experience, like working with Coach Boeheim for a couple of years and understanding who he is, and you see that, he has a lot of bright moments as a coach. He might have a lot of bright moments in press conferences, might have a lot of bright moments with people around him that he has done a lot of great things in the community for. But like I said, anytime you have a poor interaction like that, and it's happened on numerous occasions this year, I think it's damaging for your business operation, how you're conducting it, and it ruins your trajectory as a team. I really think so.
Yeah, it's really easy to understand how in today's age, when kids can transfer and things like that as much as they want, like I wouldn't want to stay and play for Jim Boeheim. With some of the other coaches that you see that are out there that are going to do more to like make it a player-driven program and not make it all about them.
Yeah.
Like, why would you want to play for that guy? You know, like Coach K was a great basketball coach. Coach K was really good about making things about Coach K. And that would have driven me crazy. I think I would imagine it drives a lot of people crazy that were ever around Duke basketball. But I think, and that's just, yeah.
I do. This Coach K reminded me of when you brought this up, Roy Williams. I want to give him a giant hug, dude. I am so impressed with this man. I met him once when Marcus Page was getting recruited, and I was in open gym as a little kid, and he was a very nice man when I interacted with him. But man, how cool is it? Like him and his wife being at those games, man. And like there's videos of them dancing when they're doing this surfing for UNC crowd. Dude, that is so special. Like his support for that program, for that university, and he's not doing it for himself. Like he doesn't have to be at those games. They're not giving him standing ovations when he's not getting recognized every single game. That's really special. And I applaud him so much, and his wife, for doing that and being so supportive of the new coach and new program and their new team. That creates lasting memories. And I can see why a lot of his players he's so loved by a lot of his former and current players.
It has become blatantly clear how much Roy Williams just loves college basketball. Because as much as he supports North Carolina, he's also going to games at Kansas. Mm-hmm. He's been to games I think he's been to a game at West Virginia to support Bob Huggins. Like he's just out like seeing his friends, and doing what retired people do. Like he's just out. He's got money. He's got his retirement. He's got time. He's like, man, I can go watch every college basketball team that I want to. I can see all of my friends and like go to all kinds of different games at all kinds of different arenas because I still love college basketball and like I love the game. And I have an immense appreciation for that because it's just like, who wouldn't want to just be an old head who can go like Roy Williams could walk up to any college basketball arena in the country and be like, I'm coming to the game tonight. And they're like, bet you're in, know? And that's just like that would be really fun to be able to live that life,
Yeah. I wish I would have known him more when Marcus Page was getting recruited because I was so scared because my brother played with Marcus in high school. So he was always kind of around during the summers and watching Marcus, and they're on the same AU team. So he was always watching them. I don't know, man. I just think it shows that little details like that. It shows why he was so successful and all the respect he has had in the past and currently has.
All right, another one in the world of college basketball. Apparently the main proponent behind a new movement to shrink the shot clock again from 30 seconds to 24, which would bring it in line with the NBA and basically every level of basketball besides everything in America before the NBA would go to the 24-second shot clock. Jamie Dixon is a big proponent of this. Obviously, the head coach at TCU, longtime college basketball coach, said that he thinks it's coming. He's been pushing for it for many years, and that he really got into that as he was coaching one of the U19 team, the USA U19 team. What at first glance, what would you think of college basketball going to the 24-second shot clock?
I love it, man. It's funny we bring this up because you just sent me this morning. I was seriously thinking about this we were talking. I was on a FaceTime with some of my friends last night while we were watching the Iowa game. And we're just like, obviously Iowa plays really up tempo, but watching like college basketball now that I've been on the next level, it is so like slow and methodical, and it seems like there's flow to games, but it doesn't feel like basketball now that I've experienced this next level. And I don't want college basketball ever turned directly into NBA, like pace wise, but I just think that this shot clock, such a long amount of time for each possession. And you look at end of games, obviously there's outliers where there's 15-point, deficits. They come back in the last 5 minutes. But if you're down 15, like NBA level with 5 minutes left, that's literally nothing because how fast the game is and how, up tempo it gets. But I think it'd be great for basketball. I think it'd create better basketball and less stalling and less. I don't know. It's just that's a lot of time for each possession. A lot of time.
Yeah, I think my only, and I wouldn't even say, like, I could be convinced either way. I don't think I have an opinion either way. But I think my only concerns would be, one, I don't want to see college basketball, and we've talked about this before, develop the NBA or to start having the NBA style of play that everything is so based on isolations and just like basic pick and rolls and things like that, and obviously NBA teams still do more than that, but I'm just saying the basis of the game being less stylistically different, where like every school is doing something different. Everybody has their own identity of what they're doing, and it becomes more like cookie cutter, that would be my fear of that. I don't want to see something like that happen. And then two, when you play half as many games as you do in the NBA, how can teams utilize press defenses? How can they utilize those kinds of things? What could be negative impacts of those because they don't have to play 80 games plus 16 or whatever playoff games, and you have more in the tank to be able to burn off more of that shot clock by putting more pressure on people defensively. So like I said, I could be convinced either way, and I'm sure that those are both things that could be worked through. That there's someone out there that'd be like, oh no, that's not how it's going to be, but that those would be the two things that I would point out, that it's like those would be things I think would be negative impacts on college basketball as a whole for just the healthiness of the sport.
Yeah, those are all great points. The thing that we have to look at when we make rules changes in NCAA, which NCAA is horrible at doing this, but what's the best for the kids in their future? And if the best for their kid, if they actually are trying to have the college level be a stepping stone for professional sports, then they need to make it as close to a professional sport as possible. Not saying they need to make it exactly like it, but they need to have it be a stepping stone. And realistically, it hasn't been great for it being a stepping stone for college athletes to go to the pros. And I see this rule change of a 24-second shot clock change being a great stepping stone for college basketball players to transition their game from college to professional, instead of having their first year professional being a big transition point. And, I've experienced it. I've experienced going to high school with no shot clock to college with a shot clock. It's a big transition. It changes the whole game of basketball. And then I've had the transition of going from college basketball to the pro level, another big transition. It's a totally different game. People, if they want to argue with that, that's their opinion. But with my experiences, it takes a big transition from college to professional, and truly understanding the game of basketball. You have to be pretty quick with your mind to really going for, I played for 6 years, but some guys that play for 2 to 4 years in college, it's going to take a while for them to translate to professional basketball.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know how much high school basketball you've watched this year, but the addition of the shot clock in Iowa high school basketball has been a very welcome addition. And I know that there are people out there who are going to say, I already know what the caveat is with the people that want to knock the shot clock, what they say. Well, it makes shitty basketball shittier because then they have to shoot more. And that's not true. No. Because it forces people to play the game. That's what it does. It makes you have to play the game. And it is, if your team is bad, your team was going to be bad regardless of whether or not there's a shot clock. It don't matter. But if your team is good, it might elevate your team and make it even better. And it's training the guys that are on those good teams to have to play the game a certain way that is going to help them adjust to play at the next level. I thought that was one of the smartest things that we've done, in our state in quite some time, was to do that. That was just, I guarantee you're going to see more kids who start to be able to play at a college level because they're more used to this. Like, college coaches are going to look at across the country and see not everywhere's got this. And they're going to be like, man, these kids in Iowa are going to be prepared to play with a shot clock. Like, they're going to know what you need to do to run your sets and to run your actions to be able to get a shot in 35 seconds, and obviously you're going to cut 5 more seconds out of that, but it's like, you were in that mindset already. There's no, like when we were in high school, in the sub-state final game my senior year, we ran 1 minute and 15 seconds off the clock and took the last shot of the game. We didn't make the shot. It went to overtime, but it was like, we called a timeout, sat in the timeout, said, do we want to take the last shot? Looked at the clock. There's 1.5 minutes on the clock, and we ran the clock all the way down. And it's like, in the moment, like, I'm not sitting there thinking like, oh, we're manipulating the game. It's like, you're trying to do what you got to do to win the game. And we had the guys on our team that could pass the ball and take care of the ball, that it was conceivable to be like, we'll just run 1.5 minutes off the clock, But in hindsight, you sit there and you're like, man, I don't know if that was the best thing for me to be able to learn how to play the game, to run 2 minutes of offense, Yeah. And I'm glad that now, again, I would not trade my high school experience for anything. We went to the state tournament, all that stuff. So it's like, I'm not knocking that. I'm not knocking my coach. It's just like, for the perspective of knowing my experiences, knowing a lot of people's experiences in Iowa high school basketball, that will elevate Iowa high school basketball considerably moving forward.
Yeah, it goes down. You mentioned too that it's just the best. It's the best thing for the kids if they truly want to take their game to the next level. They have to transition to doing stuff like that, and it does create better basketball. I don't even understand an argument against how it would not. Like, worse shots, okay, they're gonna get worse shots no matter what. Guys are gonna come down and shoot without a shot clock. Like, is it going to be a bad shot when there's no shot clock? Should you just hold for the last second shot each quarter then and get the best shot? Is that?
I mean, if you had 24 seconds, like, that would put a significant onus, I think, in recruiting on people. You got to have somebody who can go and create a shot for themselves.
Yeah.
If it gets to 6 seconds on the shot clock, and it's like Jamie Dixon, it doesn't shock me at all that Jamie Dixon is one of the biggest guys behind this. Jamie Dixon's teams always have that. They've always got guys that can just break people down and drive. And that if they played that style of basketball, everybody had to play that style of basketball, Jamie Dixon's teams would be really good, because that's just the kind of guys that he's always got. So, but it's like, you look at what Iowa State's doing, like, Iowa State wouldn't succeed in a style of play like that as their roster is currently constructed, because they just don't have anybody that's like that kind of player that you need at the end of the shot clock to go and do that for you,
Yeah. I would imagine within the next 5 years they actually do enforce. I think next year is an emphasis rule. I think the year after that's a rule change year for college.
They'll do it like in the experimental in the NIT or something next year.
Yeah,
that would be my guess.
Yeah, I bet within the next couple of years we see the NIT, and honestly, dude, within the next 4 years, I would imagine. I bet it does change, because
we need to go to quarters too. That's the other thing. Like, that needs to be.
Yeah. Well, that's just
the only level of basketball that's not playing on a quarter system.
Yes. I think that's the most sense. It's more flow to the game. Like, you look at, there's a stoppage every 4 minutes in college basketball, man. That sucks. Like, it sucks to watch. Like, it sucked playing. So now that I've experienced on the outside, I'm like, bro, you can't even watch a basketball game without getting so much stoppage to play.
It's crazy to go. I was at a high school game like 2 weeks ago, and it's crazy how fast those games go by when you eliminate those things. The game took like an hour.
Yeah.
You're in and out, and you're like, man, now what do I do? Like, it would be halftime of a college game.
Not even.
Yeah. No, that was. I think that's definitely a good conversation for people to have moving forward. All right, the last thing that I did want to bring up to you, or we have 2 more things, I guess. Man, it's gonna be a long one. John Higgins. We talked about the officiating before, but John Higgins is on a run right now across the college basketball landscape. I looked it up. He's done 22 games in 31 days, traveling all across the country from Stillwater, Oklahoma, to Palo Alto, California, to Corvallis, Oregon, to Piscataway, New Jersey, to Philadelphia. I think the only place he hasn't been is in the Southeast. Apparently he doesn't have a deal with the Southeastern Conference because they don't have him They don't have him calling any games, but he has been all over the place. And so I looked it up. We were talking about this before. We looked up the top 5, how many games those guys did in January. John Higgins did 22. I think Keith Kimball did 25. Kip Kissinger did 26. Like every single one of them was taking 5, 6, 7 days off in the entire month. And we wonder why the officiating fails in college basketball sometimes. Maybe it's because the top guys have done a game every single day for a month, and have been traveling all across the country. Like I bet John Higgins' frequent flyer miles has to be maxed out at this point. Like he can't, Chase card. They're like, no, man, no, we don't accept anymore. You're done. You're done. You got to use something else, man. You're done. You can't do this.
He's cut off.
Imagine the Marriott points that John Higgins has. I mean, it's incredible.
I think I'm gonna say something serious before I make a joke. I think I don't know exactly how the process works on. Obviously, we were talking about before the show. They're independent contractors and they contract their work through these conferences. I'm curious to see how the process is when these conferences are looking at these games and they have a guy like Higgins, right? They're not. I would be betting. I don't know. I don't know if they know this or not, but I would bet they probably don't know their schedule, what they're working beforehand when they contract their work. So they're hiring these guys, and they might have an option between this guy that's maybe working 7 games in a 15 to 20 day period, and this guy that's working 12 days in a 15-day period. But they don't know that, and they realize, oh, Higgins he's a better official on paper because he's reffing more games this last year. I feel like it just gets stacked up every single year where these better officials on paper, because they're reffing bigger games, keep getting more games because of that. And instead, these guys that are reffing lesser amount of games aren't getting the same amount of work. So I want to understand how the process works on how exactly they go about on scheduling these games, because I'd be willing to bet it kind of happens in that similar way.
Here's what I would say about John Higgins. I'm looking at this schedule right now. He gets a lot of the big games. Like he gets some of the biggest games in college basketball. He had Tuesday night's Kansas State game at Allen Fieldhouse. He had Texas and Baylor on Monday. Had Purdue and Michigan State on Sunday. Those are 3 really big games in the Midwest. 3 that you want your absolute best at. But here's where I have a problem. Saturday night he did Stanford versus Cal.
That's just a money grab.
For what? We don't got anybody else that can go to Palo Alto and do Stanford versus Cal? Like, Get the hell out of here. He did Utah versus Oregon State. Like, those were 4 teams. Only one of them is even in the top 50 on KenPom. So, like, what the fuck? What's the point of the number 4 official in college basketball being out there to do a game with 2 top 100 teams? Why is John Higgins officiating San Diego State versus Utah State? Why is he doing I'm trying to see other one. Gonzaga. Okay, Gonzaga BYU. I kind of get that one. Wednesday, January 11th. John Higgins was one of the officials for Utah Valley versus Cal Baptist.
Why?
Saturday, December 31st, UMKC versus Nebraska Omaha. He is from Omaha, so I can kind of understand that one. It's like, that's just right down the road. But it's like, those are the things that, why not just why are we got John Higgins flying to Utah Valley to do a game on a random Wednesday night in the middle of the Big 12 season, Which is
exactly why I think they see these. He contracts his work, right? And be like, he wants to ref these games. They're not going to say no to him because
he's one of the best.
Paper, he's one of the best.
Yeah.
Instead, they have a guy that is probably a really great official, but he can't get the same amount of work because Higgins is asking to ref all these games.
Oh my God. I just pulled up Keith Kimball's. Monday night, Keith Kimball was the official for Alcorn State versus Grambling State.
And Keith Kimball is one of the best, in my opinion.
He is number 1. He is the number 1 official on KenPom.
Yeah. But KenPom is that doesn't matter because that just rates the games he refs, not what the calls he makes.
Well, apparently it's not being dragged down by the fact that he also did Prairie View A&M versus Grambling State. I wonder if he's must live down there or something like that. He did Florida versus South Carolina, Southern versus Bethune-Cookman, sandwiched in between doing Kansas, Oklahoma, and Alabama, Arkansas. Like what the hell? Who else is here?
Makes no sense.
Doug Sermons he doesn't do a bunch of weird games. Yeah, it just is it.
The process is flawed.
There's 200 officials listed on here. I refuse to believe that we could not allocate the work better to where John Higgins does not have to go and do Utah Valley games, and where Keith Kimball does not have to do numerous Grambling State or Prairie View A&M games in one season. You know,
Easily.
There has to be a better way.
There has to be.
All right. Last thing that I wanted to toss out to you. I saw this story this morning on ESPN. This is actually from the Associated Press, I suppose. The headline is "Spectator Dies After Melee at Vermont Middle School Hoops Game." The lead says a brawl broke out among spectators at a middle school basketball game in northern Vermont, and a 60-year-old man who participated in the fight has died, police said. State troopers were called to Allberg Community Education Center just before 7 p.m. Tuesday after a report of a large fight involving spectators during a 7th and 8th grade boys basketball game between Allberg and St. Albans. The fight ended before troopers arrived and many of the participants had left. This gentleman had sought medical attention. He was taken by the ambulance to a hospital in Vermont where he was pronounced dead, which, you know, prayers up to him and his family. That's a horrible deal. Why are we fighting at the 7th and 8th grade basketball game in Vermont?
Everything that's what's wrong in the world, literally. And that article is everything what's wrong in society today.
We're out of control. Yeah,
we are out of fucking control, and that's not even like a comical like point I'm taking. Like, we are taking literally little kid sports so serious. We're having guys dying. And that's not the first time. Like, we've seen shootings happen at middle school games, like high school basketball games. Fights break out within parents bitching about officials, parents on the court punching refs. Like, we've seen that in the last couple months. I don't know, dude. I think we've talked about this before. I'm scared where society's headed. I really am. If this is what we're doing, a sport. Growing up, man, like, what was sports? It was like a sanctuary for us to free our minds and
be with your friends.
Life. Yeah, meet friends, diverse our friend group, like all that stuff. Meet new people from different backgrounds. Like, it didn't matter if you're black or white, Asian, Hispanic, whatever race you were, it didn't matter as long as you're playing basketball together or baseball. You're on the same field. You're going for the same common goal. That's not a thing anymore. Like, it is so serious and mishandled nowadays. I'm afraid what's going to happen in the next 10 years if this is where we're headed.
So to put how ridiculous this, I mean, if just that story was not ridiculous enough, to put the ridiculousness of this into some context, I was wondering, okay, I was like, maybe basketball is really intense in the state of Vermont. I suppose I don't know enough about the basketball culture in Vermont. Obviously, the Catamounts, good program. They've won a bunch of American East Conference titles. They're basically a mainstay on that Saturday of championship week, playing every morning. There has never been a player from the state of Vermont who has played a minute in the NBA. Wow. Never. So, what the fuck are we taking it so serious that we're fighting each other when y'all can't even produce a single player in the first 75 years of the NBA that can play for 1 minute in one game? Vermont basketball ain't, like, I know that people take it serious and all those things, but man, like, it ain't worth dying for. Your kid's probably not going to the NBA. The law of averages would strongly led to the fact that your kid is not going to the NBA, you know? Yeah. So it ain't worth that.
And it was a town of like 2,300 people too that it happened in, which is even more crazy.
Do you think that these schools were really built off the back of big syrup?
Ooh. Like syrup money?
Mm-hmm. There could be some serious, like, bad blood, some syrup bad blood going on in Vermont. Maybe that fellow, you know,
like people stealing,
seeped into the basketball game a little bit, you know.
Seeped in. That's a great pun. Like, people stole their syrup farms back in the 1800s.
Yeah, we've got like a Hatfield versus the McCoys situation in Vermont with the syrups.
That's honestly that's what the fight was.
That's what I'm saying. Like, maybe this one guy, he sat there, he said, "Hey, my syrup's better than your syrup, bitch." And then all hell broke loose.
I I'm a big syrup connoisseur, so I'm very interested in this rabbit hole we're going down. I could talk about this for hours.
Oh, I know. We talked about it for 10 minutes last week when we found out that Vermont was not one of the original 13 colonies. But apparently, it is the first place I've ever heard of a 60-year-old man dying at a middle school basketball game because there was a massive brawl in the stands. So
it sucks that we I don't know. I can't even word this without sounding like an asshole, but I feel like we're at a point where we're just stories like this we just make fun of because how crazy it is, and it happens every day.
Oh yeah, yeah. Like the sane people sit there and they're like, "Man, this shit's so off the rails," you know. And we just no one. We're some of these things. We're too far gone. Like, what can be done? You know, like what's gonna get those people to all of a sudden understand that their actions were unacceptable? It's not gonna happen. You know, those people are too far gone. And we got way too many people in this country who are way too far gone who are too stupid to have the ability to self-reflect and understand the ramifications of their actions. Like, there's way too many people out here.
Is America too drunk or just too stupid right now?
I think that there's a strong case to be made for both. Probably.
What if we just ban alcohol? You think society gets better?
I think we tried that one. It didn't work.
No, we did. Yeah.
About 100 years ago, we did try that one. Yeah.
Wow.
If anything, I think it made it worse, actually.
You know what's crazy?
It really gave a big boost to organized crime.
You know what's crazy to me? Like, I remember being in Italy, you just walk around with a bottle of wine in your hand and drink it.
Mm-hmm.
You do that in America, you're getting...
Unless you're in Las Vegas.
True. Las Vegas.
Or on Beale Street in Memphis. I mean, there's a lot of other places. But
isn't it funny, though, like, how... You think about tailgating, right? And it's so frowned upon. Let's say you're going to a bar on a normal night and you go downtown, you have a beer in your hand, you're walking downtown. People are like, yo, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah.
But the minute tailgating hits, you do that with ad nauseum, nonstop, dude. And no one bats an eye. You walk around by a cop, say what's up, cheers. 12 hours later, if you do that.
I mean, I don't know. People like to get together and drink.
I think it's a crazy, I don't know. Maybe I'm just.
I think the stupidity. This is one of those situations. The stupidity probably, the problem with tailgating is people not only do they drink, they get drunk and stupid, and then start to do the stupid things. You know, it's about doing the stupid things. If you can get drunk and not do stupid things, then you can be, hey, do your thing. You know. But the second when you start doing destructive things, that's when it becomes a problem. You know,
we should just stick with fun, stupid things. We don't have to do the crazy, stupid things. The fun, stupid things is awesome. But
yeah, not getting in fights at the middle school basketball game. Not awesome. Yeah. Not awesome. All right, everybody. We'll talk to you guys again next week. Again, check out the big game Circus Sports package right now. The big game house party on iowaeverywhere.com. All the information to sign up there is right at the top of the homepage on the website. And we'll talk to you guys again soon. Peace.